Thank you very much. Making friends with the enemy is the most revolutionary act in the world. It can change your life. It has changed my life. I am German-Palestinian and the daughter of a Palestinian refugee. My family fled from Palestine in 1948 during the first Arab-Israeli war, what we Palestinians call the Nakba, the catastrophe. Like many Palestinian refugees, they ended up in Lebanon, heavily traumatized by war, violence, and by the loss of family members. And I grew up with this trauma and with the conflict as my background. I didn't grow up in the conflict because I was in Germany, but the conflict nevertheless has shaped my life. You know, whenever I visited my family in Lebanon, we talked about the conflict and we talked about the pain. And one day in 2011, we took this trip to the Lebanese-Israeli border. That's me in the tiny part of my huge, lovely Palestinian family. And you know, the border between Lebanon and Israel is basically just a huge fence. And it's protected on the Lebanese side by UN soldiers every 200 meters. And on the Israeli side, you have Israeli soldiers and Israeli tanks every 200 meters. And when you get too close to the border, you get shot immediately. That is the situation. And when you stand there between Lebanon and Israel, you get this eerie feeling. You can feel the conflict. You can feel the tension. You can almost touch it. As I was standing there with my family, looking over this fence and seeing Israel for the first time in my life, I can't even describe how weird that felt. It was like I was like feeling homesick for this place where my grandparents came from. But I also realized that I honestly had no idea about Israelis. I had never met an Israeli before. I had never talked to an Israeli, and I had no clue about how they felt about the conflict, how they felt about peace, how they felt about people like me, German, Palestinian. So at some point, I got this urge, and I just wanted to climb over the fence and walk into Israel and find some Israelis to talk to. Because I felt that I could not understand the conflict without knowing Israelis. But you know, you can't because you get shot. So fast forward 1 year later, in March 2012, I came across a Facebook page that said, Israel loves Iran. Whoa. It was a project by an Israeli graphic designer, Ronnie Edry, who put up this poster on Facebook together with a message to the Iranian people, to Israel's ultimate enemy. Because he too felt that he did not know his enemy, and he wanted to change that. So the message to this picture said, Iranians, I'm supposed to hate you. I'm supposed to be afraid of you. And I don't even know you. And I certainly don't want to bomb you. Long story short, this picture and the message went viral, and he got a lot of responses back. Mostly from people from all over the world, but a lot of responses from Iranians, and from Syrians, and from Lebanese, and from Egyptians, and from Palestinians, and from Moroccans, and from people from all over the Middle East, who all ask themselves, who is this guy? And what is he doing? And suddenly this page, Israel Loves Iran, became a meeting place for people from all over the Middle East, and all those people began to talk. And to understand the impact is, you got to understand, probably you can't understand how big this wall in the minds is. But people in the Middle East usually do not talk to their neighbors. Arabs don't talk to Israelis, usually. Iranians usually do not talk to Israelis, and Israelis usually don't talk to any of their neighbors because it's the enemy, and you don't talk to your enemy. It's like a taboo. But on Israel Loves Iran, people were sharing their stories, and they were like communicating. And that was incredibly moving to watch. I saw this page when it was just a few days old, and I did what any reasonable person in my situation would do. I cried. And then I did something that was very much out of character for me. I contacted a stranger on Facebook. I didn't know what to expect when I first wrote my message to Ronnie and his wife. Actually, I just wanted to learn more about the project because I was interested. But before I knew it, we had this intense conversation, and we went on Skype and we talked some more, and we told each other our stories, and we told each other about our families, and we told each other about, the way we see the world, and we found out how much we had in common, and we became really good friends. And together we decided, let's push this movement forward. So we had this page, Israel Loves Iran, that Ronnie created, and an Iranian founded the Facebook page, Iran Loves Israel, as a response. And two Israelis had the idea of creating Israel Loves Palestine. So, I created Palestine Loves Israel on Facebook. And that's suddenly it was a movement. And we called it the Peace Factory. And we thought about what do we want to make with this momentum. And we decided we want to build bridges between all those countries. We want to build bridges between those conflict zones. And our mission is to actually bring people together who would otherwise not talk to each other. So we began by matching them on Facebook. And we called it it's a campaign, and it's called Friend Me for Peace. So we began by matching people from different sides of this conflict, like Palestinians and Israelis, or Iranians and Israelis, or, at some point we were like Americans and Iraqis, Syrian refugees and Germans, you name it. And we had hundreds of these people matched on Facebook, and they were like, that's amazing. I'm going to send you my picture. Please find me some person. I'm Israeli. I want to make a friend in Gaza. Or I'm Lebanese. Please, I want some Israeli girlfriend. So we did that. And sometimes people even met in real life, and they sent us the pictures of these meetings. And, it works, because when you make this connection with someone from the other side, with someone who is considered to be your enemy, you begin to change. And we wanted to bring this online experience into the real world. And we began by creating workshops where we put people from conflict zones together in one room and had them talk, but not on, a debate. We began by storytelling, and we helped them tell each other their stories, tell each other about their inner feelings, and that brought change. Because to me, it's really visible in the faces of people when two people open up to each other on a personal level and come together and talk and tell their stories. You can see it in their faces how much they change, how much their perception changes. Because the thing is, every conflict is based on just two ingredients: dehumanization and victimization. Dehumanization means that you stop seeing the other side as humans and as individuals, and instead you perceive them as a faceless mass, and this mass is a threat. And victimization means that you blame the other side for everything that goes wrong, and you perceive yourself and your side as the only victim. You get the idea? When both sides do it, you get this really complicated, unsolvable conflict. But the remedy is easy. It's just to rehumanize the people in conflict zones, and we do it by showing their faces and sharing their stories, and by helping them to form this personal bond. And, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not all fun and games. Sometimes it's incredibly difficult. Sometimes it's incredibly frustrating. Because, we're working in a field that is emotionally loaded with trauma, and it's hard to get through. And we work against decades and centuries of prejudices, of racism, of brainwashing, and of ongoing violence on both sides. And it's hard to get through, and sometimes it doesn't work. But when it works, it's like the light goes on. Maybe the most emotional and difficult time in the history of the Peace Factory was the summer of 2014, when the war between Israel and Gaza took place. There was this young guy from Gaza. He was 19 years old. His name was Islam, and he wrote a comment on the page Palestine Loves Israel, which was a courageous thing to do, while his whole neighborhood was being bombed. And what he wanted to know was why. Why are they, the Israelis, doing this to us? And you got to know he had never left Gaza, and he had never met an Israeli, and everything that he knew about Israelis was bombs and destruction. So naturally, he asked himself, are they even human? Within 1 hour, he got 50 friend requests from Israelis. And the responses he got on his comment were incredible and blew his mind, and mine too. Because many of those Israelis answered that they too were scared, that they too had prejudices against Palestinians, especially against those in Gaza. And they answered him, we don't want this war either. We don't feel well with this situation. We are afraid as well. But what actually blew his mind was the couple of Israelis who told him, we are so sorry for your losses. We are so sorry for your pain. We are so sorry for your suffering. And that was what brought a complete, and what actually shattered his mind. And it was the other way around as well, because for all those Israelis, it was the first time that they talked to someone from Gaza. So actually, what happened was he became a peace activist. And he told all his family and his friends, and he created this movement in the Gaza Strip in the middle of war. Peace is not something that happens when a war ends. Peace happens between people. Peace is a state of mind. And once you make this direct connection with your enemy, with someone from the other side, you begin to realize, you begin to see them as individuals. You stop seeing sides, you see people. And that is what brings the change. And I'm not naive. I know we cannot solve this conflict just by sharing a heart and then it's it. And the bad news is we cannot change the world. But the good news is we can change our world, and we can change the world of those around us. We all can go out today and friend a stranger. We can go out today and smile at a stranger. We can go out today and make this direct connection to someone from the other side. We live in a world where we are constantly being told that we have to be afraid of the other, that we have to be afraid of those who flee from war, that there's some enemy out there. And it's frustrating. But the good news is, peace is in our hands. And peace is what we can create every day in our own communities, in our schools, in our families. And all we need is one click on Facebook. Just imagine every Palestinian had one friend in Israel. Imagine every Israeli had just one friend in Iran or in Palestine. Every American had just one friend in Afghanistan or Iraq. Imagine every German had one friend in Nigeria or Syria. Can you imagine the impact? Thank you very much.